The hammering never stopped. Not at dawn, not at midnight, not on Sundays, not during storms, not even when the workers begged to rest. For 38 years, the sound of construction echoed through the Santa Clara Valley, saws grinding through redwood, nails driven into walls that led nowhere, staircases climbing towards ceilings that would never open. Sarah Winchester didn't just build a house, she built a labyrinth. And by the time she died in 1922, no one, not the architects, not the foreman, not even Sarah herself, could explain why some of the rooms existed at all. But here's what they could confirm. She was one of the wealthiest women in America, heir to the Winchester rifle fortune, a widow who had lost her infant daughter and her husband within 15 years. And after those deaths, something changed in her. Not grief. Grief is common. This was something else. She moved west, alone. She bought an unfinished farmhouse in San Jose, California, and she began to build. And she never stopped building. Not for 38 years. Before the mansion, Sarah Winchester was unremarkable. Born Sarah Lockwood Pardee in 1839, she grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. Well-educated, fluent in multiple languages, quiet but not withdrawn. In 1862, she married William Wirt Winchester, son of Oliver Winchester, the man who turned a struggling shirt manufacturer into the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. The Winchester rifle wasn't just a product. It was a tool that reshaped the American frontier. It killed thousands, outlaws, soldiers, Native Americans, settlers. It was used in wars, massacres, executions, and every death generated profit. By the time Sarah married into the family, the Winchesters were already wealthy beyond measure. She gave birth to a daughter in 1866, Annie Pardee Winchester. The child died 40 days later. Marasmus, the doctors said, a wasting disease with no clear cause. Sarah never had another child. 15 years later, in 1881, her husband William died of tuberculosis. He was 43. Sarah inherited $20 million, roughly equivalent to $500 million today. She also inherited a 50% stake in the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, generating an income of $1,000 per day. She would never need to work. She would never remarry. And within months of her husband's death, she left Connecticut and traveled alone to California. The story most people know is this. Sarah visited a medium in Boston. The medium told her that her family was cursed, haunted by the spirits of everyone killed by Winchester rifles. The only way to appease them, the medium said, was to build a house for the dead. But she also obsessed over it. Chandeliers had 13 bulbs. Windows had 13 panes. Rooms were designed with 13 panels. She signed her will 13 times. She built rooms in multiples of 13. But she also built a staircase with 44 steps, then divided it into 2 flights of 22. She installed spiderweb motifs in stained glass windows and had them repeated throughout the house. Some believe she identified with the spider, constantly weaving, constantly building, never finishing. Others believe it was a symbol of entrapment. Then there was the séance room. Sarah held private sessions there, alone. The room had 3 exits, but only 1 entrance. Sarah would enter at midnight, lock the door, and remain inside for hours. No one knows what she did, but workers reported hearing her voice, low, continuous, as if she were speaking to someone. When they asked her who she was talking to, she didn't answer. By 1906, the house had reached 7 stories. Then the earthquake hit. The San Francisco earthquake of 1906 measured 7.9 on the Richter scale. It killed over 3,000 people and destroyed much of the Bay Area. The Winchester mansion was heavily damaged. The top 3 floors collapsed. The front of the house was destroyed. Entire wings were rendered structurally unsound. Sarah was trapped inside for hours. When workers finally reached her, she was unharmed, but she never rebuilt the upper floors. Instead, she sealed off the damaged sections. She ordered the wreckage to be left where it fell. Rooms half destroyed, staircases ending in rubble. And she continued building. The question no one asks enough is this: why didn't she stop? She had more money than she could ever spend. She had no heirs, no obligations, no reason to keep constructing. But she didn't slow down. She didn't simplify. She didn't rest. Even as her health declined, even as arthritis crippled her hands, even as she grew older and frailer, the hammering continued. She moved through the house at night, dressed in black, carrying a candle. Workers saw her standing in empty rooms, staring at walls, listening. There were rules, unspoken but absolute. Sarah Winchester did not allow anyone to enter certain rooms. Even the foremen, who had worked for her for decades, were forbidden from specific sections of the house. One room was kept locked at all times. Sarah called it the Daisy Room, named after her daughter's nickname. Inside, she kept the child's belongings, clothes, toys, a cradle. The room was never renovated, never expanded, never touched. She visited it alone. Another area, located in the central part of the house, was referred to by workers as the Hall of Fires. It contained a series of small rooms, each with a fireplace, arranged in a sequence with no clear purpose. The rooms were connected by narrow hallways, but they didn't lead anywhere useful. They simply existed, one after another. Sarah would walk through them at night. One worker claimed he saw her standing in front of an unlit fireplace, speaking softly, as if reciting something from memory. When he moved closer to hear, she stopped. She turned toward him. She said nothing, but she didn't need to. He left. He never entered that wing again. By 1910, the house was no longer just a residence. It was an organism, a structure that consumed resources, labor, and time without producing anything functional. It existed only to continue existing. Sarah employed between 12 and 20 workers at any given time. She paid them daily. She provided meals. She ensured they were never idle. If a carpenter finished a project, she immediately gave him another. If a crew completed a room, she ordered modifications the next morning. Nothing was ever final. There were no vacations, no days off, no holidays. Christmas Day, 1912. Workers reported that Sarah stood in the grand ballroom, watching them install a window. She didn't speak. She didn't explain why the window was necessary. She simply observed. When they finished, she marked a small X on the sill with chalk. Then she left. The window was sealed shut 2 days later. Sarah Winchester rarely left the estate, but when she did, she followed a specific pattern. She would dress in black, cover her face with a veil, and take a carriage into downtown San Jose. She visited 3 places: the bank, the post office, and a specific furniture supplier. She purchased furniture constantly: chairs, tables, cabinets, wardrobes, items she would never use. The supplier later estimated she spent over $25,000 on furniture alone, most of which was stored in unused rooms or hallways. She never explained why. One theory is that she believed the spirits needed furnishings, that the house wasn't just for her, it was for them. But if that were true, why would she order multiple identical chairs and place them in rooms with no other furniture? Why would she install cabinets that were too small to hold anything? Why would she buy dining tables and place them in hallways? The furniture wasn't functional. It was decorative, or symbolic, or compulsive. No one could tell the difference anymore. Sarah Winchester was not insane. That's important to establish. She managed her finances meticulously. She signed contracts, paid workers on time, corresponded with business associates, and reviewed architectural plans with precision. She spoke 4 languages. She played piano. She read extensively: literature, history, philosophy. She was sharp, organized, deliberate. But she was also isolated. She had no living family by 1910. Her parents were dead. Her siblings were estranged. Her husband and daughter were long buried. She received letters, dozens of them, but she rarely responded. One letter, discovered in her desk after her death, was from a distant cousin. It read, "Sarah, we are worried. Please tell us you are well. Please tell us you are not alone." She never replied. The house itself began to develop a reputation. Locals avoided it. Stories spread, strange lights in the windows, sounds of footsteps in empty rooms, the smell of smoke when no fires were lit. Sarah dismissed the rumors, but she also reinforced them. She installed bells throughout the house, 13 of them, connected by wires to a central panel. She would ring them at irregular intervals, day and night. Workers assumed it was a signal, a way to call them for instructions. But Sarah often rang the bells when no one was nearby. She would stand in the bell tower, pulling the rope, listening to the chimes echo through the halls. Then she would stop and wait, as if expecting an answer. In 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic swept through California. San Jose was hit hard. Thousands fell ill. Hundreds died. Sarah Winchester, then 79 years old, isolated herself completely. She allowed no one inside the main house except a single servant who delivered meals to her door and left immediately. The construction continued, but workers were kept outside. They built additions to the exterior walls, installed windows from scaffolding, repaired roofing without entering the house. For 6 months, Sarah spoke to no one face to face. When the pandemic subsided, she resumed her routine. She returned to the Blue Room. She issued new instructions. But something had shifted. Workers noticed she moved slower. Her handwriting, once precise, had become shaky. Her sketches, which used to be detailed and exact, were now rough approximations. She spent more time alone. There's a persistent story, impossible to verify, that Sarah Winchester once hired a psychic to visit the house. Not for a séance, not for guidance, but to confirm whether the spirits were satisfied. The psychic, according to the story, entered the house, walked through a dozen rooms, and stopped in the Hall of Fires. She refused to go further. When Sarah asked why, the psychic reportedly said, "There are too many." Sarah asked, "Too many what?" The psychic didn't answer. She left the house and never returned. By 1920, the mansion was nearly complete. Not because Sarah intended to finish it, but because her body was failing. She could no longer walk long distances. She used a wheelchair to move between rooms. Her hands were gnarled with arthritis. Her vision was deteriorating. But the construction continued. Even when she couldn't supervise directly, she sent written instructions. Workers would receive notes, unsigned, handwritten on scrap paper, instructing them to modify a door frame, or move a window, or tear down a wall they had just built. They followed every instruction, because they knew if the building stopped, Sarah believed she would die. And in a way, she was right. On September 4th, 1922, Sarah Winchester went to sleep in a bedroom on the first floor. She didn't wake up. She was 82 years old. The hammering stopped. For the first time in 38 years, the house was silent. When workers entered the house the next morning, they found her body in bed, peaceful, undisturbed. But they also found something else. In the room where she died, there was a calendar on the wall. Every day for the past month had been marked with a small black X, except for September 4th. That day was circled in red ink. Sarah Winchester left no explanation, no journal, no memoir, no letter of intent. Her will was 13 pages long. She signed it 13 times. She left her fortune to charitable organizations, her property to her niece, and specific instructions for the disposal of the house's contents. But she said nothing about why she built it. The mansion was appraised and inventoried. It took workers 6 weeks to catalogue everything inside. What they found defied logic. 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 40 staircases, 13 bathrooms, but also rooms with no doors, doors with no rooms, staircases that climbed into solid ceilings, hallways that ended in blank walls, a second-story door that opened onto a 15-foot drop, a staircase with 7 turns covering 50 feet, when a straight hallway would have taken 10, a chimney that rose 4 floors, then stopped, windows installed in floors facing other floors, cabinets 3 inches deep, and the bell tower with its 13 bells, each connected to a different room. But no explanation for what the bells signaled, or who they were meant to summon. The most disturbing discovery was the séance room. It was small, plain, unremarkable from the outside, but inside, it had been designed with absolute precision. 3 exits, 1 entrance, no mirrors, no windows. 13 hooks on the wall, a single chair in the center facing north, and on the floor, beneath where the chair stood, workers found something scratched into the wood. Not words, not symbols, just numbers. 1, 8, 6, 6. The year her daughter was born. And beside it, another set. 1, 8, 8, 1. The year her husband died. There was nothing else in the room. No books, no candles, no evidence of what Sarah did during those midnight hours she spent alone. But the chair had been used. The floor around it was worn smooth. She had sat there for years, speaking to someone or listening. The house was sold to a group of investors in 1923. They turned it into a tourist attraction almost immediately. They advertised it as the Winchester Mystery House, built by spirits for spirits. They offered guided tours. They embellished the stories. They added details Sarah never confirmed. But they also preserved the house exactly as it was, because the truth was strange enough. Over the following decades, people tried to make sense of Sarah Winchester. Psychologists suggested she suffered from obsessive-compulsive disorder, that the construction was a compulsion, a way to manage grief and guilt. Architects analyzed the design and concluded she had no formal training, but she understood structural engineering well enough to keep the house standing through multiple earthquakes. Historians pointed to the Winchester rifle fortune. They noted that Sarah inherited her wealth from a weapon responsible for thousands of deaths. They suggested the house was an act of penance, a way to atone for the blood that financed her life. But none of these explanations account for the specifics. Why did she build staircases that led nowhere? Why did she install doors that opened onto walls? Why did she spend 38 years constructing a house with 160 rooms, most of which served no purpose? And why, at the end of her life, did she circle September 4th in red ink? There's one more detail. It wasn't discovered until 1975, when a contractor was hired to reinforce part of the foundation. He was working in the basement, a section of the house that had been sealed since Sarah's death. He found a door, locked. He opened it. Inside was a small room, empty except for one thing: a mirror. It was covered with a cloth. When he removed the cloth, he saw that the mirror had been shattered. Not recently, decades ago. But the glass hadn't been cleaned up. The shards were still scattered on the floor. And on the wall behind the mirror, scratched into the plaster, was a single sentence: "It is not enough." Sarah Winchester spent 38 years building a house. She employed hundreds of workers. She spent millions of dollars. She created one of the most bizarre architectural structures in American history. And when she died, the house was still unfinished. Because it was never meant to be finished. The construction wasn't the goal. The construction was the point. As long as she was building, she had a purpose, a reason to continue, a way to control something in a life where she had lost everything that mattered. Her daughter died. Her husband died. Her wealth came from a weapon that killed thousands. And she spent the rest of her life building a house for ghosts. The Winchester Mystery House still stands. You can visit it, walk through the hallways, climb the staircases to nowhere, open the doors that lead to walls. Guides will tell you the story. They'll repeat the legend of the spirits, the curse, the séances. But they won't tell you what Sarah Winchester was really running from, because even she didn't know. In 1922, the hammering stopped, but the house remains. 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, and somewhere, in a locked room beneath the foundation, a shattered mirror. And 5 words scratched into the wall: "It is not enough." It never was.